I am Fatima Kadir, and for much of my life I was convinced that Islam was the ultimate truth. It was the foundation of my identity, influencing every part of my existence. Until one verse changed everything I thought I knew. Growing up, I never questioned what I was taught. Islam felt flawless, and the Quran was the unquestioned truth. One day, I stumbled upon a verse that unsettled me deeply. It wasn't someone else's opinion. This challenge came from the very book I had always relied on. What was it about this verse that disturbed me so profoundly? Why did it shake my beliefs to their core? What happened next would change my life in unimaginable ways. If you've ever felt uncertain or sensed something was off, I want to share my story with you. But before we continue, please subscribe so you won't miss any of my important videos. Type, "I subscribe" in the comments, and I'll personally welcome you to our community. Now, let's get started. I grew up in a household where Islam was more than just a religion. It was the bedrock of our lives. From my earliest words, I was taught to recite verses from the Quran. My parents instilled in me that Islam was the ultimate truth, the only path to God, and that questioning it was simply not allowed. I performed my 5 daily prayers, bowing in total devotion. I fasted every Ramadan, memorized surahs, and wore my hijab with pride, believing it was my sacred responsibility as a Muslim woman. Our home revolved around Islamic teachings. We celebrated Eid with joy, avoided anything considered haram, and followed every rule meticulously. There was comfort in the predictability, the assurance, and the sense of unity that came from being part of the Ummah. I never thought to question what I'd been taught. Islam was perfect, unquestionable, and I was convinced I held the truth while others were lost. I remember feeling pity for Christians, Hindus, and atheists, thinking they were misguided for not accepting Islam's truth. Whenever doubts surfaced, I drowned them out with more prayers and Quranic recitation. Deep down, I was certain Islam provided every answer. At least that's what I believed, until everything changed. It happened on a day like any other, a day I never expected would alter the course of my life. I was in my room, flipping through the Quran as I had so many times before. But this time my eyes stopped on a verse I'd either overlooked or never truly considered. It felt different, as if it demanded my full attention. The verse, Surah An-Nisa 4:34, stated that men are protectors of women, and in some situations, a husband is allowed to strike his wife. I read those words again and again. My heart pounded. Strike them! I was shocked. I had always believed Islam was a religion of peace and justice, especially for women. Yet, here was a verse permitting a husband to hit his wife. I tried to reassure myself, wondering if I misunderstood or if the translation was inaccurate. Maybe there was a deeper interpretation that scholars knew, but I didn't. I quickly searched for different explanations, hoping to find something that would ease my mind, but no matter where I looked, the message stayed the same. Some scholars tried to soften the meaning, saying it referred to a gentle tap, while others justified it as a necessary form of discipline. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I wanted to ignore what I'd read, to dismiss it like I had with other difficult questions. But this time I couldn't. The more I reflected, the more troubled I became. If Islam truly valued women, why would it allow even a minor act of violence? How could a just and compassionate God permit this? And if I had ignored this verse for so long, what else had I missed? That was when the first crack appeared in the foundation of my faith. Once that crack formed, it only grew. I couldn't keep my doubts bottled up. The burden was too much, and I needed answers. So I did what I'd always been taught. I turned to those considered wiser. I first went to my mother, choosing my words carefully so I wouldn't sound disrespectful. "Mama, I read something in the Quran today about husbands disciplining their wives. What does it really mean?" She barely glanced up from what she was doing. "It means exactly what it says. A husband has authority over his wife. If she disrespects him, he has the right to correct her." Her nonchalant response sent chills through me. I pressed further. "But why would Allah allow a man to hit his wife? Isn't that unjust?" She finally looked at me and said, "Fatima, you don't understand. You're too young to question these things. Allah's wisdom is beyond us. We must obey." That answer didn't satisfy me. I needed more than just blind obedience, so I approached an imam after Friday prayers, hoping he could offer more clarity. "Sheikh, I read Surah An-Nisa 4:34, and I don't understand why it allows a man to strike his wife." He smiled kindly and said, "Sister, don't let Western ideas confuse you. Islam gives women rights like no other religion. This verse isn't about abuse, it's about discipline. And even then, it's a last resort, meant to be symbolic, not harmful. Trust in Allah's wisdom. On the outside, I managed a respectful nod, but inside I was unsettled. If discipline was the intention, why involve any physical action at all? How could a loving God approve even a symbolic gesture of harm? No matter how much I longed for reassurance, his answer never truly brought me peace. I kept searching, hoping someone would finally offer the comfort I needed. But every response was the same. You just don't get it. Trust Allah and stop questioning. They told me I was thinking too much like a Westerner. Islam is perfect, and my doubts were just the whispers of shaitan. But deep down, I knew it wasn't shaitan. It was my own conscience, the truth trying to break through. The more I searched, the more obvious it became that something was deeply wrong. That troubling verse was only the beginning. Suddenly my mind was flooded with questions I'd never dared to ask before. If one verse could disturb me so much, what else in the Quran had I missed? Who really authored the Quran? Was it truly the unchanged word of God, or was it shaped by people? The deeper I looked, the more contradictions I found. Islam claims the Quran is flawless, unchanged, and the final word from God. But if that's true, why are there so many interpretations and even contradictions? Why do some verses promote peace, while others seem to justify violence? How can Islam claim to honor women, yet allow their oppression? And then I wondered, why does Islam treat Jesus so differently from Christianity? Growing up, I was taught Jesus was just a prophet, nothing more. But as I read further, I saw that Jesus was unique. No other prophet was born of a virgin. No other prophet was called the Word of God. No other prophet performed miracles like Jesus. Yet Islam reduced him to just another messenger. Why? I couldn't stop searching. I started reading Christian texts and comparing them to the Quran. I listened to stories from former Muslims who had walked this path before me. These were people who once believed as I did, but who discovered something greater. I listened to Christian apologists discuss the historical reliability of the Bible and present compelling evidence for Jesus' divinity. The more I learned, the more the foundation of Islam seemed to crumble beneath me. What if I'd been wrong all along? What if the truth I'd held onto wasn't the truth at all? I reached a breaking point. The weight of my doubts, questions, and fears became overwhelming. If Islam wasn't true, then what was? Did God even exist? The thought of leaving everything I'd ever known was terrifying. My family, my community, my entire identity was tied to Islam. Leaving it would mean losing everything. Yet something inside me stirred. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly seek the truth. Not just to defend what I'd been taught, but to open my heart to whatever the truth might be. I whispered a desperate prayer, not knowing who might hear. God, if you're real, show me the truth. Then something happened that I'll never forget. One night, I had a dream so vivid and real that I woke up trembling. In the dream, I wandered in complete darkness, unable to find my way. Fear overwhelmed me as I felt utterly alone. Then, in the distance, I saw a figure surrounded by a light so bright and pure it cut through the darkness. As he came closer, I was filled with an indescribable sense of peace, love, and safety. I tried to see his face, but the light was too intense. Still, deep in my soul, I knew who he was. It was Jesus. Without words, he spoke directly to my heart. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I woke up gasping, my heart racing as those words echoed in my mind. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I'd heard those words before, quoted by Christians from the Bible. But why was I hearing them now? Why would Jesus reach out to me, a Muslim woman, at my lowest point of doubt? That was the moment everything changed. I couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. Jesus was calling me, and for the first time, I was ready to listen. From that night on, I couldn't dismiss what had happened. Jesus had reached out to me in a way I never expected, right in the middle of my confusion. Still, I had so many questions. Who was Jesus really? Was he just a prophet as Islam claimed, or was he something far greater? I started reading the Bible, not to argue with it, but to truly understand. What I found left me in awe. Jesus wasn't just another lawgiver, he was the embodiment of love. He healed the sick, forgave those who sinned, and welcomed the outcasts. He never demanded blind obedience. Instead, he invited people to come to him in faith. Rather than telling husbands to strike their wives, he called them to love their wives as Christ loved the church, with selfless, sacrificial love. Instead of promoting violence, he taught his followers to love their enemies and pray for those who hurt them. With every page, my heart softened. For years, I'd feared a distant God, always watching, ready to judge and punish. But Jesus revealed a God of love, a Father not waiting to condemn me, but to save me. I came to know a God who didn't expect endless rituals or flawless behavior. He simply wanted me to trust in His grace. For the first time, I felt a peace that I had never experienced in Islam. The constant anxiety of not being good enough faded away. There was no longer a need to strive for God's approval through perfect deeds. Jesus had already made the ultimate sacrifice, making a way for me. In Him, I finally discovered real freedom. But as the truth of Jesus took root in my heart, a new fear emerged. What would it mean to walk away from Islam? I knew the risks all too well. Leaving Islam wasn't just about changing my beliefs, it meant risking everything. My family, my community, even my own safety. I had seen what happened to others who made this decision. Some were rejected, some threatened, and a few even lost their lives. I thought about my parents, the pain and disappointment they would feel. Would they disown me? Would they ever accept me again? The thought was crushing. For weeks I wrestled with this fear. I prayed, I wept, I begged for guidance. And whenever doubt crept in, I heard that gentle voice. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I couldn't deny what I had witnessed, or ignore what my heart now knew. Then it hit me. I had lived in fear for so long. Fear of asking questions, fear of failing, fear of never being enough for God. But Jesus brought freedom, not fear. So I made my decision. No matter what it cost, I would follow Him. When I finally told my family, the pain was deeper than I could have imagined. My mother broke down in tears. My father's face turned cold with anger, and my siblings refused to speak to me. They called me a disgrace, a traitor, someone corrupted by Western ideas. Some relatives cut me off completely. The pain was overwhelming. Yet in the midst of that suffering, I felt something sacred. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't alone. The truth had set me free. And even though I lost so much, I gained something far greater. I found the one who would never abandon me, the one who loved me before I even knew Him. No matter what happens, I know following Jesus is worth every sacrifice. If you're watching this and questioning everything you've ever believed, know that you're not alone. I understand how scary it is to doubt what you've always accepted. But let me share what changed my life. Truth doesn't fear your questions. If something is real, it welcomes your curiosity instead of demanding blind faith. It invites you to seek, to ask, to knock. And Jesus promised that those who seek will find. I never thought I'd leave Islam. I never imagined I'd be here telling my story. But when I sincerely asked God for the truth, He led me to Jesus, the only one who could fill the emptiness inside me, the only one who could give me the peace I'd been searching for all my life. If you're searching too, I encourage you to keep going. Read the Bible, ask the hard questions, and most importantly, pray. Ask God to reveal the truth to you, and I promise He will. One verse made me question everything, but in the end, it led me to Jesus. If this story has touched you, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring testimonies. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and comment, "I subscribe" below so I can personally welcome you to our community. Remember, you are not alone. Keep searching for the truth because it will set you free.